Okay. So I'm joining as well. Let me know if you guys can open the Nearpod. Are you folks able to access it on your screens?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Good.
Okay. This is tough. Good start. Whoever
That's a really good one.
Okay.
At least
Who
it's Kabhi
shared?
Khushi. And,
Oh God. Oh no. Oh no.
Who shared?
I'm
Kabhi
waiting to
Khushi
see if
Kabhie Gham?
anyone's going to share happy titles.
गोलमाल है बहुत हैप्पी टाइटल ही है.
Not okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. For the person, it's happy title. What is happening behind the scenes is the question. Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious to know who put in Swades. If you'd like to unmute and share.
Optional. Don't feel pressured.
Yeah.
my wife was going to see War tonight. She fell sick, but she was going to see War tonight. Lucky no one put that down.
Not a bad one, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so what's good is that we're seeing a range of responses. There's Hum Saath Saath Hai, and then there's Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham.
I think the last one is the most accurate one, Chalti Ka Naam
Chalti
Gaadiye, because
Naam
that's how
Gaadiye.
everyone operates.
Okay.
True. Cool, awesome. So we hope this has got you wide and awake for what's going to be a very fun and interactive session. We can get started.
Are we waiting on anyone else?
We have a bunch of folks, so I guess we can get started and they can join in later.
All right, sure.
Cool.
There's 2 Jasmeets and 2 Pratikshas.
I'll put in a message on the group to
Yes, that we would appreciate
give
that
a-
because we don't want
yeah.
people to come in and then be lost.
Yeah, I will do that.
So we can wait for a minute or more.
Yeah, and hopefully we have some more creative answers come into the Nearpod meanwhile.
Yeah. Does anyone like to unmute and share why they shared the title they did and what was the thought process?
Sorry, just before you do that, is it okay if I share the link on the group? I know Tejas had shared it on email. I think it just might make it easier for people to join. Is that all right?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
You could also share the Nearpod link in the group as well.
We're getting some fun ones now.
This is a good one. Ye rishta kya kehlata hai? Captures the spirit of data analysis.
Yeah.
Also, feel free to submit more than one answer if you're overflowing with creative inspiration.
Cool. I think we have 2 more folks join in. Pratiksha, should we get started?
Yeah, we can.
Awesome. So let me know when you guys can see my Google Slides.
Yes,
we can.
See it? We can see it.
Okay. So thanks for engaging in that fun activity, folks. We'll start by doing a quick introduction of who we are. We are Project Tech for Dev. Some of you might have known about us. Some of you might not have. So I'll give a short introduction. One is that Project Tech for Dev is essentially an organization that builds technology solutions that are specifically catered to the social sector. Apart from building solutions, we do a lot of ecosystem events that include sprints, conferences, as well as knowledge based events such as this, where we help talk about, or we talk about data and AI. Specifically, today's session is we that's me, Pratiksha, and Ashwin. We're part of the Dalgo product at Project Tech for Dev. Dalgo is a data platform that's specifically built for nonprofits who are using data in their day to day and are looking to take it from raw data to reliable insights in an automated fashion. Right. So, just to kick off today's session, we'll share what you should be expecting in the next 1.5 hours that follow. One is that we'll talk about what the data lifecycle looks like for the nonprofit sector, and in a very process by process way, we're going to walk through how you can use these processes as well as supporting tools to think about how you're using data in a very efficient as well as actionable way. What we want to do is keep the session super engaging, as well as we've tried to keep a very hands-on format, which means that there'll be a bunch of polls throughout the session. So please engage. And with that, we'll start with a story. So folks, meet Meera. Meera is a monitoring and evaluation lead at an education NGO. And she's sitting in her office over here at 5 p.m. on a Friday, just like us. And she's working on a funder deck, which is due tomorrow. Now, this funder is asking her for an update of her programs in the past couple of months and how things have been progressing. Now, the challenge is that in Meera's organization, the data lies across 10 programs, 5 states. And there are different methods of collecting the data across different tools. So she has data on Google Sheets, she has data on Survey CTO, she has data on Google Forms, and she's also collecting some amount of data at Comcare. So what she's looking at is different sheets, different tools, as well as different tabs open on her laptop, and she doesn't know where to begin consolidating all of it or making sense of it, right? So that's where she thinks that this is so tedious for me. There are too many hours that I have to spend into either putting this data together before getting into the insight that I want. And some of the things that she needs to do to get there is merging data, duplicating data, fixing errors, or fixing date formats. And that's why she thinks that what if all of this data, or what if there was a simpler way to bring all of this together? For example, what if she had all of her data in one place? What if she could pull it easily, clean it easily, and visualize it easily, and then try to understand or spend time understanding the story that she can eventually get to the funder? And that's where she realizes that having a well planned data lifecycle is what can help her with this process. And before we go on to what is a data lifecycle, I'll pause and I'd love to know from you guys in terms of how many of you actually relate to Meera's story over here. And you can raise your hands.
I think the question is how many don't?
I can see Utsav, Prashant, Jasmeet, Prerna, Aditya. Okay. So then, if we do relate to Meera's story, um, Aditya, could you unmute and share what part of Meera's story do you relate with specifically?
Hi. I think it's always while the data is over there, always, but I think it is how we represent it because every funder wants it in a certain format, every one needs it differently. So I think all that gathering of the data, I think, is something which I feel is something which takes up a lot of our time, I think. And even though it's like a master deck, and then you have to kind of like keep on kind of like taking bits and pieces of it. And I think that's always a time-taking process. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of folks who raise their hands would resonate with what you said, right? That the data is there, but it takes too much time to actually get the right data amongst a barrage of it. And this is where a data life cycle, or the concept of it, helps us mitigate some of these challenges. So if we had to describe the data life cycle in one sentence, it basically means that there are certain processes that we can incorporate in thinking about data that can help us get that raw data into insight in a very quick and efficient way, rather than spending too much tedious time as well as effort into it. And the first thing that comes to most of us when we think about a data lifecycle or a data process is that there are two steps. So it's like a ball that you throw from one process to the other, that you collect data and you visualize data. But Aditya, like you said, there are so many steps in the process that actually are an important part before between collect and visualize. And that's where it's more of, you can think of the life cycle as more of a complex way, where there are different parts. Right from the point of collecting data, there's the storing of data. If you have important user information, how is it that you store it safely? Then you have the transformation of data, which actually means the unpretty stuff, which is the merging and the fixing and the formatting. Then you have the visualization of data. But most importantly, when your data is coming to a dashboard, that's not what ideally the funder wants. So that's the point where you say that, hey, what is the data telling me? Hey, what's the dashboard telling me? And that's where the last step comes in, which is acting with data. So with this context, what we're going to do in the next couple of minutes is walk you through the whole process. And what does that process look like, which includes all of this, is the first, which is planning of data. What is it that we want to collect and why? The second becomes collection of data. The third becomes storing of data. The fourth becomes transforming data, the merging, the validations, etc. The fifth becomes visualization of data. The sixth becomes acting of data. But finally, what we want to do is show how all of this ties together in a cyclical manner. So acting informs planning as much as planning informs acting. And before we get started with the whole process, we want to do a quick poll to know from you guys, what is the process that you think you're doing really well today, and what is the process you think you could do better. I'm going to go ahead and launch a
I've
poll.
launched it.
Awesome. Are you guys able to see the poll?
And if you can't see all 6 options, just stretch it out on your screen. Yeah.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of equals now.
We have just
We've
one
got,
response.
yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Just from a visualization perspective, the tooling over here could have been better.
Thanks, Ishita. Okay, so we have a few responses which have come in.
Okay, so are you guys able to see the responses?
No,
Okay.
I can, but you'll have to show it if you want to.
No.
Okay, so I'll just quickly share what the results are looking like. A lot of you shared that you're doing the planning and the collecting part of data really well. Where there is a gap is the transforming, visualizing, and the acting part of it, which is really interesting. I'm going to go ahead
For
and
us, we've also faced challenges with storing because I think this storing really impacts also how we kind of act, how we synthesize this data.
Okay.
That's really interesting. And we'll talk more about the challenges with the storing, where we'd love to know what specifically you're facing coming up next.
I've sent the poll responses in chat if you guys want to take a look.
Awesome. So now we'll move to the first step of the process, which is data planning. Now, essentially, we all know what data planning is, but why is important is because fundamentally it feels that the more data there is, the more valuable it is, right? Because we're collecting everything, there's a lot of insight we can derive from it. But the reality of it is too much information leads to too much overwhelm, because the more there is, the more there is to manage. So hence planning from a point of view of why, what data we are collecting, and more importantly why, becomes important in a bottom up approach. Now, let's go back to Mira's story, where she's from an education NGO, and she's thinking about, or she is tracking a lot of metrics that her teachers are collecting across schools. Now, there's the attendance data, there's parent teacher attendance data, then there's conference data, then there is daily visits data, etc. And similarly, they're collecting around 20 metrics. But eventually, there are 2 to 3 key important metrics that she's tracking on a day-to-day basis. So while she's collecting 20 metrics, what she's looking at on a day-to-day become the 3 important data points to rigorously record. And that's where the importance of having the right data at the right amount become important, because it helps clear the noise and only track what you think is going to be important in the short term as well as the medium term. We can also think of this in terms of what is a must have data point and what is a good to have data point. Accordingly, you can think about prioritizing what metrics you want to track. This also becomes important because holistically, in terms of the data life cycle, if you know what data you're going to collect, it also helps answer questions such as where you're going to collect data. So for example, Mira decides that she wants to collect this data on Google Sheets, then she doesn't have to think about what visualization tool can plug in with Google Sheets, because we know that Looker Studio is part of the Google Suite, so it would be a pretty straightforward choice. And hence, with the effort saving as well as the integrations, planning helps answer a lot of the initial questions. Now I'll give it over to Pratiksha, who's going to walk through the data collection process.
Yeah. Hi guys. So thanks Stuti for all of that. And yeah, like Stuti mentioned with regards to the planning process, it's important to break stuff up into each individual step, because the way you'll tackle each individual problem and the kind of attention you'll give it will be different, as opposed to if you just look at it overall, like just get some data, we'll build some charts and then we'll figure it out, right? Each of these stages has to be tackled independently to get the best possible outcome and to help your data pipeline scale. So that's what we're going to try to do. And after planning, the step that we're looking at is data collection, which is one of the most important things that your NGOs will be doing as well. And this code that you're seeing on your screen is just to ground you in a common fallacy that a lot of people have, which is that collect everything, right? Collect as much of data as we can. We'll get beneficiary details, we'll get socioeconomic information, we'll collect their phone number, their father's phone number, their sister's phone numbers. Essentially, the big part of data collection that you'll need to think of is how much of this data do I actually need? And we'll see what problems are there with over collection of data as well, but you need to make sure that you're cutting down on noise. Next slide. Yeah. So this is a stage at which Mira has figured out what data that she needs to collect and what information that she needs analyzed. But
It's just one thing. I'm not sure the slides are being shared on the screen.
I'm able to see them. Is everyone not able to see them?
Yeah, we're able to see.
Who else is not able to see?
Yeah.
We can.
Yeah, we are
Maybe-
able to see.
Oh, okay. Maybe I
Uh,
Maybe you can leave and
yeah,
rejoin or see your
rejoin.
internet connection.
Sure, I'll do that. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Prashant. But yeah, once you know what data you need to collect, then you actually need to figure out how to structure and architect and build a collection plan. And that is a part that can be a little bit challenging for NGOs to figure out. And most NGOs go into it blindly without the kind of thinking and processing that needs to happen at this stage. Next slide. Yeah. So some things that you need to keep in mind, which are very important when you're setting up data collection in your organization, is, like I mentioned, you should be selective, right? One of the problems that happen when you collect everything is one, that the amount of overhead that you build during the analysis stage, during the transformation stage, and everything that comes later will be very, very high. And not just that, but when you're doing things like collecting PII, which is personally identifiable information, there's a lot of government regulations and hoops that you'll have to jump through in terms of, getting consent. Who can I push this data out to? Can I analyze it and put it on my dashboards? So you really have to sit down and think about, if this data is important for me to collect, then you should collect it. Otherwise, leave it be. Right? So that's something that should be discussed internally. And secondly, data validation. So as a consultant, I've worked with a lot of NGOs who have Google Sheets. Some of them know about data validation, some of them don't. But even the ones who know about it, rarely is it actually implemented on the ground. Because you have people creating Google Sheets willy-nilly, people filling out Google Sheets willy-nilly, and there's not really a structure or a process around it. And there's a lot of dirty data that ends up in Google Sheets. So we'll be doing an activity towards the end of this section as well, where I'll talk to you a bit more about data validation. But this is something that should be in place at the beginning before you even begin data collection, ideally, right? Making mistakes hard, essentially, which is, you should incentivize people to not make mistakes, because if they try to make mistakes, their job gets harder. And then avoiding free text. So unless you're one of the rare unicorn NGOs who've actually figured out how to do qualitative data analysis in an automated fashion, which is a challenge a lot of NGOs face right now, you should avoid free text in any data collection tools you build. In any forms you have, any feedback surveys you're running, don't collect free text, because most of the time it'll just sit there. Nobody's actually going to go through thousands of textual responses. And there's also an opportunity cost to that, right? Instead of a free text feedback field that you're probably giving your beneficiaries or stakeholders, you could have put in some questions like the ones that we just did in the poll, rate it on a scale from 1 to 6, and put down what you think some common problems or issues might be, and have them rated. Now, this is something you can analyze in an automated fashion. And if you end up going with a free text response, there's an opportunity cost there, and then you end up not actually having analysis. So that is something to avoid. The next thing I would say is build a data map. And this is something that's connected to the next point also, which is data ownership, right? Just internally getting organized about your data collection. So if you're an already functioning NGO with extensive data collection processes, do an internal audit. Have someone go around to every vertical, every person working with data collection in your organization, and document everything. These are the tables we have, these are the forms we have, these are the fields the data we're collecting. I have a text box here collecting text data, I have a date field here collecting dates. And then what this will really help you do is identify who's in charge of collecting what data, where is duplicate data collection happening. Maybe I don't need to ask this question in this form because somewhere else we're already asking our beneficiaries. In fact, one of the NGOs that I worked with had a problem where their beneficiaries would interact with them in 5 or 6 different verticals, and they were being asked the same socio-demographic question across every vertical, because the data wasn't being shared across verticals, and there was no communication happening about how the data collection is being organized between different verticals. And this was starting to actually cause hesitation in their beneficiary. Should I even bother reaching out to them, because I know this is going to eat up like an extra 15 minutes of my day. So a data map will really help you identify those problem points and eliminate them, and make sure that you know who's responsible for what data, so you know who to go to when there's an issue. And the last is, however intuitive you think your systems are, like everyone looks at a Google Sheet and thinks, of course, people know how to use this, right? It's just putting data into a cell, it's just typing. Regardless, whoever your frontline staff is, your caseworkers, your field workers, they should be trained. If they don't know how to use your tools well, there will always be problems. If you're using a case management system, for example, make sure that everybody knows what it means. What are the different case types being used? What are the different form fields being connected? How is it being stored in the back end? If you're using Google Sheets, make sure that your frontline staff knows how formulas work, what app script automation mechanisms exist, what is data validation and how do I set it up. All of this stuff becomes very important for you to keep in mind, and most people don't think of it as deeply. Now, Stuti and I have just done a whole load of talking, but are there any questions at this point before I proceed? And also, I just want to say, feel free at any time if you have questions to just put them down in the chat. Someone will be monitoring the chat at all points, and we want to take questions as they come because otherwise we'll lose them. And if one of you has a question in mind, somebody else also probably does. So we'd rather address it. So feel free to hit us with questions. If you have any now, you could also unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, I'll proceed.
No
Okay.
questions so far.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So this is an example of what we've called a data map. If you're a data engineer, then you've probably also heard the term ER diagram, entity relationship diagram, thrown around for this. So this is essentially just a map of what are the different kinds of data being collected, what is numeric data, what is textual data. And this particular example has not been color coded. But if you build it out internally, color coded for which vertical is doing this data collection, who is responsible for it, when was the form last updated. So if you have some sort of centralized source for where all your data collection is being organized, then any problem that you have, it'll become so simple for you to identify and fix it, right? So this is an example of what we recommend you guys all build. Now, just with a show of hands, can I see how many of you feel like you have complete transparency within your NGOs of what data is being collected, where, by whom, who's responsible for it, who do I reach out to if I need to make changes? If you guys have clarity, raise your hands if any of you have that in your organization. Okay. Yeah. Cool, Prashant from TAP. That's great to hear. So the fact that a lot of hands here are not raised is just telling me that this is work that would be useful to you guys. So hopefully you start with that. Next slide. Yeah. And some common mistakes which are being made. Just to reiterate a few points over here. Fill them all up. Go next. Yeah. So one thing that I also really wanted to mention over here, we've already covered the fact that you guys really need documentation if it doesn't already exist for you. And I've seen that most NGOs don't end up having any. And the next point after that that I really do want to emphasize on is the fact that forms and case management are two different ways of data collection. And a lot of NGOs have a mix of both. Some of them operate primarily with forms and surveys. But it's very important for you to sit down and figure out when you need which. So, what do I mean by case management? Just in case there's some of you in here who are not clear, it's a kind of software built usually for the social sector, which allows beneficiary tracking. So, you don't just have like form responses come in and then you have to do joins on the back end to figure out who submitted this, what other forms have they also submitted, what other data do we also have about them. It's all organized and collated by the data collection tool itself and then handed to you. So that's what a case management tool is. And in many cases, I've seen NGOs which have a brilliant use case for a case management tool are just using Google Forms and then struggling with the data collation part in the back end. So this is something that you really should do an analysis for. And if a switch to a case management tool is in order, then that should be done. The next point is consent and ethics. I touched on this briefly before, but if you are collecting private information about your beneficiaries, and private here can mean their phone number, it can mean their address, it can mean their gender. All of that falls under private information. Make sure that you're obtaining consent from them, because if you're sharing even the data with your donors, that data then needs their consent to be able to be shared according to data governance laws and regulations, right? And it would be useful for you guys to also look into the Indian government's regulations on because they have quite a few rules on when can this data be shared outside the country if your donors are sitting outside the country, for example. And a lot of NGOs ignore this. That's one more thing. And the second is siloed verticals. So if you have different teams, different departments doing different things within your NGO, as much as possible, get them into the same data collection plan. into the same tools, because that will make the data transformation and collation process down the line much easier. Don't have them make decisions by themselves for themselves. Involve them in a larger data plan for the organization. And lastly, the same point of make mistakes harder. Because if mistakes are allowed by your data collection tool, mistakes will be made. And this is just something we've seen even after rounds of training with caseworkers and field workers. So you have to set up your data collection tools in such a way that mistakes don't happen. Next slide.
Pratiksha, to your last point, I think there's an interesting question that Suresh has in
Sure.
the chat. Suresh, would you like to unmute and ask the question? Okay, I'll just
Sorry,
read it
you
out.
want me to speak about it?
Yeah, if you could like ask the question.
Yeah. So we work across 160 districts in India, and these are at government hospitals where patients come for treatment. Treatment happens over a 4 or 5 year cycle. There are forms which are designed which capture the baseline information and treatment at every stage. So there's a structured format. The format is the same across all the districts. This is then fed into a mobile app and accessible on a central server. Reports are designed and so on. So it works very well. But what we have noticed is in some locations, our colleagues enter the data on the mobile app but don't update the paper format at the clinic. It's important for us to maintain the paper format because the government looks at that. So I was wondering whether you have uh, met such, come across such situations in other places, and how has it been addressed? Thank you.
Okay, that's a very interesting use case. And honestly, I personally have not worked with an NGO who've come to me with the requirement that we need to maintain things in paper as well. Um, and if that's an issue because of government regulations, would like printouts or digital reports not be something they accept at all?
Since there are multiple visits across a year, you know, we we will need to be printing it out every time. One of the solutions that we have discussed is once a year we can print out and send it across. Yeah, but
Yeah, if that'll work, then that'll make things a lot easier. However, one more thing that I would bring up, if when you're speaking to whoever your government point of contact is ask them if, dashboards would also solve the requirement for them. So I've worked with organizations like ATCF, for example, who have dashboards that they've built for the government. Like they have projects with the Maharashtra government, with PMO, and we've built real-time dashboards for them and they seem to accept it. Like maybe paper is the default way of doing things,
so
but
the use case here is the
hmm,
doctor is treating a child
hmm,
and therefore wants to know the history of that particular child's
mm-hmm,
case and
mm-hmm,
doesn't want to know the collated information.
mm-hmm.
The dashboards are more like
Oh, this is
yeah,
brilliant then
so
because
because the doctor could also potentially change over a 5 year period.
right,
X doctor started the treatment, but now it's Dr. Y. So Dr. Y wants to know what happened in the
yeah,
last 2 years with child X when Dr. X was treated.
yeah. Yeah. So this is actually exactly the use case that we've solved for another NGO called Umeed, who run clinics for children with developmental disabilities. We've built this specific dashboard for them, uh, just to see the history of a particular child who's walked into their clinic for treatment, where they can just enter in an MRN, which to them is the medical registration number. And then they'll see the entire history of the child's interaction with their organization across different verticals, across different people, and they don't need any pen and paper records anymore, because they're able to get that through a dashboard. So I think even what a dashboard can be doesn't have to be very restricted. The way we've achieved that is just by building some smart data models and tables in the back end, with the information of each visit a child has had, and then even the case summary notes, and just visualized all of that across different charts and tables for the qualitative information in the dashboard, which are filterable by a medical registration number. So by doing that, we've made it easy for doctors as well to check patient history. maybe something like that would solve this use case for you. And if you want to discuss what we've done with Umeed further, that is something that we'd be happy to sit down with you and do one-on-one as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we can move on, Pratisha. I think.
Yeah.
I know Prashant and Ishita had their hands raised earlier.
Yes?
No, no. Mine was raised for something even earlier than that, which I responded. So I had forgotten to put it down.
Yeah,
Okay.
my hand was also raised for the same reason that Prashant's hand was raised.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Yeah. Feel free to raise your hands if you have any other questions. Um, we can move on to the next slide, Siddhi.
Yeah.
All right. So what we've done over here at each stage is we've done some sort of analysis between the different tools which are commonly used across the data collection space. So we've put them all down in our slides, and we'll be sharing our slides with you at the end of the presentation for you guys to take a look. But these are tools that we've seen commonly being used by NGOs, and we've just put down a little bit of comparison of the prices, the pros and cons, and for what use cases and what kind of NGOs this is most suited to. So this is just as a reference for you guys, if you guys are making any decisions, for you to come back to as a starting off point, for you to know what tools you should look at. So this is just a reference slide for you guys later. And if you have any questions about those after taking a look at them as well, then you can reach out to us. Next slide. So what we have planned next is actually a little bit of an activity, which I want to do with you guys. I'm going to be sharing my screen now and taking you guys through it, although I am facing internet problems. So if I cut out at any point, apologies, which is also why I have my video turned off right now. Let me know if you guys can see my screen, and hopefully you can.
We're
No,
waiting.
yet.
Not yet?
No, not yet. You know,
Okay,
stop
just
and start again.
let me try that. Yeah. Okay. I tested this out before the call. Let me give it one more go and let me know if it shows up for any of you. What about now?
Yeah, we can see it
Yeah.
now.
Awesome. Okay. So I've prepared this sheet as well, which I'll be sharing with you guys, which will have step-by-step instructions of what I'm actually doing. So if you guys want to test this out and follow along at some point, you can. Stuti, can you just share the link with them?
Yeah, it's on
Chat?
the chat now.
Yeah, great. So essentially what I'll be doing in this little bit tiny demonstration is showing you if I had to build a data collection workflow with NGOs in Google Sheets, although that wouldn't be my preferred recommendation, how would I do it, right? What is a good way to set it up? And that's what I'll be showing you guys. So I'm assuming we have an NGO which runs libraries, right? And they have multiple different libraries filling out a sheet for how many visitors they're having for activities that they're conducting. So we have library A, where they're putting down the visitor ID, what activity was being conducted, and how many people were there who were part of the activity that was being conducted by the visitor, as well as the name of the uh, person who's running the activity that the ID corresponds to, and the date. So this same data is being collected at library A. Library B also has activities, and the same data is being collected by them. Now, a problem this NGO was having was that random data was being put into their sheets, right? Visitors' data sometimes would end up being data like many, right? The names would end up being names that don't really fit in with their employee register because there's a typo in there. So they weren't able to do automated aggregations. They were having activity types come in with typos, or maybe the number was being put in here on accident. Dates were being put in which don't exist, like the 32nd of February. And that's honestly, I've seen examples like this in real NGO production data. IDs they weren't able to match because they didn't exist. So how do you avoid issues like this happening? Step one would be through proper data validation, right? And I'll just show you a quick example of how you would set up data validation on a Google Sheet. And we'll breeze through this part to get to the more interesting part. So suppose you know that the kind of workshops being conducted at your library are reading, and then you have study sessions and chess games and whatever it might be, right? You'd want to go to data validation. Let's remove the existing rules, add in a new rule over here, and make sure that the correct range is selected, which is this whole row, right? Select drop down, put down whatever options you have. Chess club, you can color code them if you want to as well. And allow multiple selections, don't allow, and then add the rule in, right? So what this means is that anytime somebody wants to fill out the data in this column, they can't type it in. They have to select one of the pre-existing options, and you can put other in there as well. So suppose they start a new type of workshop, right? This will then force the people doing the data entry to come to someone in charge and say, hey, I'm not able to put this in because it's not there in the drop down. And then you can actually sit and think about what processes and what in our pipeline will need to change because there's a new type of activity we've added in. These things usually slip through the cracks. Another thing you can do with the dates is select the date column, data validation again, and add in a rule. And over here, there's so many different types of data validation rules you can put in. Is valid date is something that's already been created for you as an option. And then you can select reject the input and show help text. So over here, please enter a valid date. So now if somebody tries to enter 32nd of February, the Google Sheet literally won't let them. 2025 02 32. Do you see? Please enter a valid date. There was a problem. I can't even put it in, right? Which means that corrupt data won't even get into your system. And you're not even just limited to the kind of data validation options which are present in the drop downs for you over there. So I've put in an example over here as well. Now over here, there we had visitor IDs, if you remember in the Google Sheet. Now suppose you had wrong visitor IDs coming in which didn't match with what you have in your database. You can create a custom data validation rule over here where what you select is right at the bottom, custom formula. Put in a formula. And if you are someone who doesn't really know how to work with formulas, AI tools like ChatGPT are great at writing formulas for you if you explain your table and your use case, right? Reject the input, show help text. Please enter a valid ID in the format XYZ, whatever your ID format is. Done. So what this means now is I want to put in an ID like lib dash 4305, it lets me. But if I put in something else, no ID, it says there was a problem, please enter a valid ID. So bad data won't even get into your system in the first place if you do it this way. And this is something that every Google Sheet that you guys are using for data entry in your organization needs to have. It makes everything down the line easier. With a quick show of hands before I proceed, how many of you actually have data validation put into Google Sheets that you use for data collection? And since I'm sharing my screen, I can't see. Maybe Stuti can tell me the people
Yeah,
who've raised their hands.
we have Ishita, Utsav,
That's great.
Shraddha, Prashant from TAP.
Awesome.
That's really good to know.
Yeah, this is something you all need to do.
So does Suresh.
Another, yeah.
Manzil also has it.
Perfect. Another useful feature is this section over here in under data called protect sheets and ranges. Suppose you have different tabs in your Google Sheet for maybe different employees, which is a way you could organize it, different branches of the library. You can go ahead and specify over here who can work on which tab, who can work on which rows, who can work on which columns, and define that specifically so that people supposed to be doing data entry in one place aren't accidentally doing it somewhere else, which I've also seen happen. So another very useful feature you should use, and specific instructions on how you'd want to set that up if you're not familiar with it are in the activity sheet. So all that is there. And now to the actual interesting part, which for me makes all of this come together, is now that I have these different Google Sheets where my different branches of the library program are doing their data entry, what I want to do is create a master sheet. And in this master sheet, I want to make sure that absolutely no one except me, the person in charge, has edit access to it. So you'd want to make everyone a viewer, right? No one has edit access to the sheet except you. And then what you'd want to do is actually set up a workflow where every night at a particular time, the data from these two sheets are copied into this master sheet. And you know that the data over here cannot be edited back. So that way you don't need to go to the 20 different Google Sheets you have and monitor the data from all of them. You can create a master sheet, customize it in whatever format you want, and have the data processed land into the master sheet. Now, how would you set up something like that? It's with this very powerful piece of functionality called AppScript. And I don't know how many of you would have used it, but if you have a Google Sheet, you can then click on extensions and go to AppScript and then do some work there. Now, in the interest of saving time, I've already written a very quick function over here to do what I just described for you guys. Essentially, I've pulled in IDs from the other three sheets. The IDs are right here in the URL. And I've had ChatGPT generate this code. I did not write it, just to prove to you guys that this is something it's good at. And every time I run this piece of code, all of the data entry that's happened over here will get pulled in to the new sheet. So let me just go ahead and show it to you guys. I'm running it now. It's executing. And we'll give it a minute to run. Execution completed. That was quick. And if we go back here, the data that was put in the other two sheets is now present over here. And this will make consolidating and analyzing so much easier for you guys, especially because of triggers. Now, what you can do in the triggers section is you can add a trigger and have it run at a particular time every day. So I have a function, right? And I can run the deployment, make it time driven, and say that I want it to run every day from midnight to 1 in the morning. And if it fails, notify me and just create this trigger. And once that's done, you don't even need to go run it. Every day at midnight, the data will be pulled in from those sheets into the master sheet. So go make a cup of coffee, check the master sheet in the morning, your work is done. And AppScript is so powerful. If you actually sit down with ChatGPT and build out an elaborate script, you could even do your data cleaning in this process. Because it's code, you can essentially do whatever you want to do, even in transformations. And if you want to follow along and test this for yourself, you can just go through this document and do it for yourself. And that'll be a very nice, clean workflow that you can set up using just the Google Suite. How many of you, just for my curiosity, have used or tried using AppScript before? If you have, just raise your hand. Because if you have, I'd want to know how your experience with it has been. Nobody yet. Okay. How many of you? Oh, Ishita, Vivek, great. Awesome. Okay, Vivek.
Vivek, do you want to unmute and share how you're using AppScript? No pressure, or Ishita.
Yeah. So I'm using AppScript to automate our leave system for our organization. So that if somebody applied for a leave, then they get automated mail and it get approved. So yeah.
You brought up a very good point, which is because it's integrated with the Google Suite, you could even have it automate reporting for you, like send you an email every day morning with what happened yesterday. Think of how useful that could be for you, right? If you automate that. How many of you will want to try AppScript? This will also inform us just in terms of how useful this is as a tool for NGOs going forward. Okay. All right. I'm seeing a few people say that they're going to try it out. Cool. All right. I think we can go to the next slide now, Stuti. That's the little bit of a demo I had. Has the
Cool.
sheet been shared with them?
Yes,
Workshop
the
sheet?
document has been shared.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Quick time check before we move, Pratiksha. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So now we're just going to talk briefly about storage. And what a lot of NGOs are missing that we've seen at Dalgo is a centralized storage solution. Different verticals are using different LMS, different HR software. The data is not being consolidated in a central place. And this is essentially a reporting and visualization nightmare. Because as long as things are spread out, it makes any kind of data transformation you need to create in your organization extremely tech heavy. You will need like proper coders to sit down and write pipelines for you, which require expertise. But if you figure out your data collection in such a way that all of the data from your different data sources comes and falls into a centralized data storage layer, everything downstream becomes so much easier for you guys, right? Joining different tables, seeing cross vertical analytics, building dashboards, because then you just need to connect your dashboard to one place and you're done. So it's very important you guys have a centralized data storage solution. What we at Dalgo usually recommend is to go with AWS, build out a Postgres database, and have the data from wherever you're collecting it, whether it's Google Sheets, whether it's Survey CTO, come and fall into that Postgres warehouse. And only then do you think about things like data transformation from the data that's in one place. And the good thing about AWS is if you're a registered nonprofit, they'll even give you free credits. So this warehouse won't even end up costing you anything on top of what you already have. So I strongly recommend a centralized data storage solution. And if it's a challenge for you guys, like, hey, I'm collecting data in 10 different places, how do I get it to come and sit in my data warehouse? There's a lot of tools built exactly for that, data extraction tools. So Airbyte is one that we use. Fivetran and Stitch are also other tools which do this exact same thing. You'd have to host these, especially Airbyte has to be hosted by you guys. It's an open source tool. Um, but you can leverage them to pull all the data that you have into your warehouse, and everything downstream will become easier. Any questions before I move on? Just wanted to make this quick point here for you guys. Someone was mentioning data storage being a challenge in the beginning. Okay, let's move on, Siti. Yeah. And now finally, we've come to data transformation, the part of the pipeline that is a challenge for most NGOs. And the whole point here is that most of the times you can't go directly from collection to visualization. You need a cleanup aggregation step in between. So this is essentially how you make your data ready for analysis. Next slide. Yeah, we'll do another quick poll over here. Do you want to launch it?
Yeah, it'll be on your screen in just a moment. Awesome. You guys should be able to see it on your Zoom screen. Okay, Pratiksha, we've got 3 responses for a full week or more, 5 responses for a full week or more. Again, it's 6 responses. We've got 2 responses for 2 to 5 days. Just to clarify, folks who have said a week or more, is this a week or more that you spend cleaning data in a month? Anyone who selected that option can unmute and share.
Yeah, we do sometimes.
Okay.
Okay. So ideally, this number should be a few minutes. That is what the result will be if you set up a good transformation pipeline, which is important. Employee bandwidth should not be spent doing manual cleanup of data if you plan your data pipelines well. And we'll talk to you a little bit about how you can do that. Next slide.
Just a moment. Let me end the poll and share the result.
Yeah.
So everyone can see it. You guys should be able to see the results on your screen. So 50% folks have said a full week or more. Then there's 2 folks who said it takes less than 1 day, which is great. And then we have 17% people saying that it takes them 2 to 5 days. Cool. I'm going to stop sharing and we can move on.
Right. So we're back to meeting Meera again. And now Meera has data in a centralized storage layer. That part has been figured out. And she knows that she wants to use it to build dashboards. But now her challenge is she doesn't know how to automate the cleaning, deduplication, validation, aggregation, all of that stuff that we do manually. How do you make sure it happens without anybody needing to step in and make it happen? Right. And that's what we'll talk about. Next slide. Right. So actually, let's start with the tools. I'll tell them a little bit about what automated tools are supposed to do. Yeah, so we have a bunch of different tools that you can use for this process, right? One of those examples I've already shown you, which is app script. And you can automate that process, write a script, set up a trigger, have it run every day, and then you don't even need to look at it. Clean data will show up in a Google Sheet for you, right? You could even do joins across different sheets over here. And even an even easier option than that would just be using Google formulas, pivot tables, things like that. But what I'd really recommend is going with tools like DBT or Dataform, Power Query. So these are much more powerful tools because the kind of customization that they offer you is immense. And not just customization, but features. Like if you look at a tool like DBT, it comes with built-in snapshots, which means you can go back in time and see what did my data look like last year, what did my data look like 6 months ago. You can write test cases. You have macros or functions available which make the whole process easier. So there's a lot of extra functionality tools like DBT, Tandem, Power Query, Dataform offer you. In terms of just building out your data transformation, cleaning, automating it, and then letting it do its thing. So I would really recommend that those of you who spend a lot of time doing the data cleaning, look into these tools and seeing how it could tie into the rest of your pipeline. Now, assuming that you'll be building that out, the automation, let's go back now to the best practices. So important things that you'll need to do is join your data and normalize your data. So the reason I've put these two together is this is usually a bit of a struggle because when you're joining, you'll end up with duplicates and the logic over here can be very tricky to figure out, which is why we were emphasizing on the planning stage at the beginning, because when you're doing your planning, you'll need to foresee the problems that can happen with transformation, right? You'll need to say that, okay, if I'm collecting the IDs in this vertical and that vertical, will I be able to join these two to get cross-vertical analytics later? So you need to make sure that you're able to bring together data from different sources because that's where the real deep cuts, analysis-wise, can come through. And by normalize, essentially make sure that at the end of your transformations, you end up with tables where you have like one row per beneficiary or one row per activity. Just data that's clean and easy to visualize if it's there in this format. And secondly, snapshots and backups. Mistakes can happen at any time, right? Even if wrong data entry makes it through your collection process, ends up in your warehouse, figuring out what that data should have been is a nightmare. And I've seen NGOs just tell me that, okay, forget it, we'll do data collection correctly from now on. We can ignore the historical data, and you never want to be in a position to have to say that. So keep backups of your data, keep snapshots can essentially show you before this data entry came in, which messed up the data, what was it before, and then you can restore it, right? Have test cases. This is again another layer of protection to make sure that the data that's there is correct. Are dates in a date format? Are numbers making sense? Do I have people in my database who are 200 years old? Right? All of this kind of stuff will be caught in through test cases. And if you're doing transformations, have extensive documentation for what's being done in each model. Because if the person who wrote or handled the transformation for you moves on from your NGO, it then shouldn't be that nobody else knows what's happening and we can't take over and make changes. So have extensive documentation and automate the whole process, orchestrate it. Next slide. Yeah. So we just wanted to show you a very quick example of what you can achieve with transformation. So one of the clients that we worked with and done a lot for, we've actually written around 300 DBT models for them, right? Because they had very complex data, was ATE Chandra Foundation. And they used to spend around 10 hours every week cleaning their data before. And after we've automated their transformation pipeline, 1 hour is what we've put down because it's the least we could put down. But it's come down to a few minutes of checking that the data is there and it makes sense every week, essentially. And that should be the goal for you. It should be ambitious because it's definitely achievable. Next slide. Yeah. So this is just if you're the kind of NGO right now who's doing nothing but using a few formulas in Google Sheets, right? The next thing, the next level of complexity that you should aspire to should be incorporating things like custom Python scripts, app scripts. Power Query is just app script, but in the Microsoft ecosystem. So Power Query, So this is the next level of automation you can look at, and then you can go to the stage where you're using Airbyte, you're using DBT, full on Python integration. So don't, if it's overwhelming for you, you have limited tech capacity, don't try to jump to the most complex level immediately. Try your hand at automation with the next level up, and then see how it's working within your NGO workflows, and help your people get used to automation as a process. Next slide. Yeah, we've talked through this already, and
Yeah.
use that as a reference.
Pratiksha, do you want to pause over here and ask folks what level of transformational maturity they think they're at?
Yes, for sure. I think that's a great idea. Um, could you guys please share in the chat whether you think your NGO is currently at the basic level, the medium level, or the advanced in terms of the kind of tech stack you're using?
Interesting. Prashant, would you like to share what your tech stack looks like, since you mentioned a medium level of maturity?
Yeah, I mean, I am not the right person who has used this, but our data team uses scripts for like data transformation. I'm not well versed with that, but I know that we do use it. So
Okay, that's interesting. There's also Suresh who says that they're at a medium level of data maturity. We have Umoya Sports Aditya saying that they're at a basic level. Um, Manzil also mentions that they're at a basic level. It's good to know. Um,
But this is good news
yeah.
because this means that all of your lives can get so much easier with a little bit of thinking and automation. So that's actually good news.
Oh, this is interesting. So Ishita mentions that they're somewhere in the middle with Google Sheets and they're using Zoho Creator for everything else.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Great.
cool. So we can move on now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we come to the most splashy part, which is the visualization, which is what we all look forward to and might be interfacing with it on a day to day, right? And just in terms of how we are looking at data. Now we go back to Mira's story, and Mira is looking super happy with the whole process that has happened. Now she says that great, my data is cleansed, transformed. More importantly, I can look at it with confidence and know that it can be trusted. And my job is made a little bit easier. But hey, there's another challenge that's coming to her, where once she has the clean data, there are folks within the organization coming to her and saying, hey, can you pull this 2021 report that we did for this particular program? Or someone wants a custom last quarter trend to use in a conference that they're attending. There's also donor related data specifications that are different than program related data specifications. And now she feels overwhelmed again, that how is it that I can pull all of this data for everyone which looks custom, right? And that's where the automation of dashboards, which percolates from visualization, becomes very important, so that everyone has access to the data they need by being able to toggle the right things. So for Mira, what would make her life easier was that if all insights were automated in a way that everyone could utilize on a interface, irrespective of their data proficiency. Mira knows that she has the data knowledge, but she wants everyone else who might be at a basic level to also be able to access those dashboards. Then automated reports that is catered to each stakeholder, say a program lead, could also be useful in only showing them what is relevant to them. Live and updated dashboards, of course, to see that the data is inflowing and everyone's looking at the most recent data. As well as she recognizes that she cannot make all the data that she's a custodian for accessible to everyone. So role based security as well as row based security becomes super important over here. So, with this context in mind, she looks for the right visualization tool, and it can be anything based on her specific needs. So, it can be Looker Studio if she's collecting her data on Google Sheets. It can be Power BI if she thinks that there is some kind of Microsoft stack that she's associated with, and the combination becomes good. It can also be Superset if she's looking for a free tool, and if she has a higher budget, she can also consider tools such as Tableau, Metabase, etc. So with all of this, what she begins is that, okay, I'm going to find a visualization tool that suits everyone. But there are some key things that she needs to keep in mind that Pratiksha is going to talk through. Pratiksha, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. So one, and this is a process that we follow internally as well, always reverse engineer. Don't look at the data and say, oh, I can take this column and make it a chart. I can take this column and make it a chart. Start with, if I'm doing reporting now, if I'm going to a meeting now, what are the questions people are asking me I need to have answers to? Make a list of those questions, make a list of where that information can be found in your data, and build charts accordingly. So one thing we've seen commonly during our consulting engagements is we'll speak to our NGO and they'll come back to us with a list of 50 different charts they want. And then we make those charts and we see at the end of the day, there's like 3 people actually logging into the dashboard because it's information overload and they only need 1 or 2 pieces of information that they want answered. And they're like, this is too much of mental overload. I'd rather just go figure it out myself. So having too many charts is a detriment. Have your dashboards organized. So if there's different people in different roles who need answers to different questions, have like 10 different dashboards. That's not a problem. Instead of having one with all of the charts, which then becomes useless to all of the different roles, right? So make sure leadership has their own charts and caseworkers have their own charts, etc. And have balanced KPIs. Now, this is actually a point that which I'll address in the next slide. It'll make more sense to you once I talk to you guys about what Goodhart's law is. So I'll move on for now to row level security. So row level security is a feature in most of the visualization tools. And essentially what that means is, suppose you have caseworkers collecting very sensitive data about domestic violence cases happening in an area, right? The caseworkers are also people usually living in that area. So if I'm a caseworker collecting data on one family, I don't want that all the other caseworkers in my team have access to that data. That's actually a data governance liability. And what row level security does is it allows you to put in conditions like, if the caseworker is the caseworker listed in that row where this person's case data is there, only then can they see the data. So you need to implement row level security if you're building like lower level dashboards for your field workers, for your case workers, for different donors. Even they may only want to see data about their particular projects and not everyone else's. You don't need to build different dashboards for each donor. In that case, you can have one dashboard and just implement row level security so that if this donor logs in, they'll only see their data. Avoids a lot of double work as well. And then trust. This is usually a big one for us. Build documentation for your data transformation processes. Build as much transparency in easy language as you can so that when people see numbers, they understand where those numbers are coming from. Because a lot of times what happens is, if caseworkers or people on the ground are doing the work to get the numbers, then they trust it. If they're just without work seeing a number like, okay, 50 cases this week on a dashboard, they'll feel like, where did that number come from? How can I report it? So you'll need to build that trust, that training, that transparency if you want the dashboards to actually be used. Otherwise, they won't be. Lastly, make sure that the tool you're using also has the functionality of relative dates. It's something that's very useful if you want to see the cases for the last week. Instead of going in and entering the dates, you can just select an option which says, show me the data for the last 30 days, for the last 7 days. Saves a lot of time when people are using the dashboard. And the reason I've put this down, even though it seems very simple, is I've actually spoken to caseworkers who've complained that I don't know how to use the date filters. They're too complicated for me to use. So having these kind of filters in place will save a lot of headache for people who might not be so tech literate. And lastly, I've just put down Marie Kondo because of the Marie Kondo method, right? What she says about cleaning is, if an item doesn't spark joy, then discard it. Do the same thing with your dashboards. Have audits, have reviews. And if someone says that, nobody's looking at this chart in my team, get rid of the chart, delete it. You're not really losing anything, you're gaining usability. Next slide. Yeah, and now I want to talk to you about Goodhart's law. So this is something that was actually fascinating to me when I found out about it, when I was studying data engineering, which is essentially what it says is, when a goal becomes a target, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So what that means is, suppose you're telling your helpline workers, right, that what I'm going to measure to see how productive all of you have been are the number of phone calls you take in a day. Then what will end up happening is that their phone call numbers may jump from 10 to 50, but the actual value that they're giving to the 50 people they're talking to has come down by a lot. So this is where the concept of having balanced KPIs comes into play, right? One very famous example of this happening is with what the Britishers did with cobras during the colonial period, which was they had a big cobra problem. So they told people that if you bring us a dead cobra, we'll give you 10 rupees. People started breeding cobras to collect money. That's another case of a measure becoming a target. So this is why it's very important for you to have balanced KPIs, and that you're not just measuring one thing or two things, that the people in your organization end up optimizing for at the cost of everything else. So make sure that the KPIs you have actually track everything you care about, so that when they're trying to improve the numbers, it's balanced, the outcomes that you're looking at. Next slide. Yeah, Stuti.
Yeah, thanks, Pratiksha. So now we've almost come to the end of the data life cycle. Meera is super happy because visualization is in its place, data is cleansed, transformed, ready to be used. But what often happens is that you remember the image in the beginning where we said that data life cycle is not collecting and visualizing. There's actually way more beyond that that we actually need to do to get the right insight from data. And in a lot of ways, we actually make it part of visualization, but really it deserves having a separate name in a process, right? So before we go ahead, we'll do another quick poll and ask you guys, what is it that informs what data you collect today? I'm going to just, I've launched the poll. You guys should be able to see on your screen. Very interesting. We are seeing responses for funder or donor requirements, internal program decision making, and a balance of the above, which is very encouraging. We're seeing acting on insights option coming up empty so far. Five more people are pending to respond. We'll keep it on for another 30 seconds. Cool. We'll end the poll now and I'll just quickly share the result. You should be able to see it on your screen. So 33 people of the folks have said that what drives us to collect, or what drives what data we collect, is actually funder or reporting needs. And then there's, I would say, like, also the second ranking important factor is the internal program decision making, and some say that it's a balance of both. A good 50% say that it's a balance of both. And this solidifies how we use the visualized data in two ways specifically. One is to share it externally with stakeholders, such as our important funders, our donors, as well as building collective accountability on the external. This is really important. But another part of data that maybe a lot of us might be looking at as underutilized, or might be thinking of as priority two, is the acting with data, where it can not only be used for immediate insights, but to actually spot trends and risks, to actually improve program designs over time when you have enough data, as well as help predict things as your program scale, right? So this is a good framework to think about how each of us is doing a combination of both, and to what capacity, and where lies the opportunity to do more of either sharing data or acting with data. So this kind of thinking of frameworking also informs how dashboards get created. Share worthy data actually needs to be more simple and large level, catering to external stakeholders like funders, having simplicity, having clarity, the conventions or the metrics reflecting what they're looking for. But act worthy data actually requires to have the granularity that, say, our M&E, monitoring and evaluation leads, or our program leads would actually look at to see how our programs are performing and what action they need to take from that data. And there are different kinds of visualizations for each of them. So share worthy data can have big number charts and statistics with little area for deep diving, but act worthy data can actually have more qualitative data tables, time series data, or even heat maps to deep dive into a particular district or a particular state that you would like to look at in terms of granularity. Another concept that is related, that we all want to think about when we are thinking about visualization and dashboards as an extension, is that while dashboards and having effective dashboards is the end goal for us to have act worthy data, that is not the only lever through which folks can look at data and action from it. For a lot of folks, looking at dashboards, looking at charts, and then trying to derive an insight from it might not be as intuitive. Two people can look at a number on a chart and have different interpretations for it. Added to that is the friction that, for example, if you're using a Tableau or a Looker Studio, you have to log into the Looker Studio every day, go to a dashboard, look at a chart, and then be able to do 1 plus 1 to actually derive the insight. While this is a great goalpost to have, there is a more efficient way to, or I would say that there is an added layer of data efficiency that can happen by making data more push worthy, which means that if for pull kind of use cases, if you have to go to the data or go to the dashboard, for push kind of data you have certain levels of monitoring, as well as certain level of alerts as well as reports that come to you custom made for the criteria that you have put in. So something like for a state level program data, if you get an alert saying Maharashtra needs attention because this number is below baseline, or for example, Meera gets an alert saying that this student has below baseline attendance rate, it's far more valuable to her than looking at a program dashboard of 25 students and then looking at it case by case. And that's where this concept becomes important for us to distinguish in terms of what does the end user of data actually need or prefer in terms of pull and push to make insight available to them. And with that, we'll do one of our final polls for the session. Let me just trigger it. Sorry, just a moment. We'd love for you to have a look at the poll in front of you and then classify whether the data line item looks like more of a sharing data use case or an acting data use case. We've got 2 responses so far. Nine responses so far. We'll wait for a minute more.
Time check. There's 10 minutes left.
Thanks, Ashwin. Cool. So we've got majority of responses coming in, and we won't share the results for this. I think this was also for us to internally reflect what we could do more of within acting versus sharing. And maybe you could go back and then do the same exercise for your programs and see if you're able to see a trend over there. Right. Now, coming back to the presentation. We're nearing the end. We're almost at the end. We just wanted to share a little bit about Dalgo and what it does in context of everything that we explained today. We looked at different parts of the data life cycle, like they're pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. With Dalgo, we attempt to bring certain parts of that jigsaw puzzle together, but specifically catered for the use cases of the nonprofits. So we have the ability to pull in your data from different sources. If you are at a stage where you have data stored in not just Google Sheets but other sources as well, we have the capability to be able to bring it to a warehouse and then clean it, transform it, as well as run a schedule for it so that it is client ready and plugged for use, ready for use. And then we also enable visualization with the platform of your choice based on the requirements that you have, right? And now we're going to come to a conclusion, like the concluding reflection. Pratiksha, you want to do it on Nearpod or do you want to just have it over here?
We can just talk through it.
Yeah, so folks, I think we've spoken for a good minute. We'd love for you to now tell us that if you had a data genie today and you had one wish, what would you ask for? And please feel free to unmute and share. Utsava said that make me the genie like you.
This is also useful for us because as tech providers in the social sector, we like to keep our fingers on the pulse in terms of what people are looking for. Ability to converse with data and get a response. Okay, that's a really good one. That would probably be my answer as well. Need AI integration on Zoho to get insights like a bot.
Oh, that's really cool. What I'm seeing, there's a common thread between what Suresh and Nishita are both asking for is the ability to chat with data, something that we've also explored to our
I'm
capacity.
interested when so many people had said they were spending more than a week cleaning data every month. I'm surprised there aren't more responses, which is give me back all of that time.
I
I think that feels more achievable.
yeah,
You
I
don't
mean,
need a genie.
if you have the option to just talk to data and like get whatever you want, then you don't need to sit and clean it, right? So
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway and note for us. That until we have that genie, we can do what is to the best of our capacity to be our own genies. Um, so now we'll move on to some of our concluding stuff as well as housekeeping. Pratiksha, do you want to share
Mm-hmm.
concluding statements and
Yeah.
notes?
So just I'll be so brief. Just some very quick points. One is don't view data as something that you just share for reporting. Really try to build a data driven culture in your organization where you use it to inform program decisions routinely. And secondly, a lot of NGOs say that, oh, this all of this sounds too complicated. It's not worth the effort. But then if you look at the actual effort your teams are putting in into cleaning the data, it's going to be a lot more than the amount it would take to actually build these solutions out. So value the time of your staff and actually do the difficult work, build out these pipelines, and start small. You don't need to go from 0 to 100 in a day. You can make incremental progress. That would be a better way to do things while keeping scalability in mind.
Awesome. Thanks, Pratiksha. And with that note, uh, I think just to reiterate what she said is that even basic Google Sheets can be the start and where we all begin. So we hope that this session was generally helpful to you. What we also wanted to share was that as part of Dalgo, we're doing a bootcamp for NGOs who are looking to explore a data automation and insights platform as part if it caters to your needs come September. So the bootcamp is going to be a 2 day all like in-person session in Bangalore where the team would be there and we'll be working with you to plug your program data into the platform and then get it to insights in a span of 48 hours. If any of you is interested in participating in this boot camp, please let us know in the chat, or we can reach out to you, or we'll also trigger a poll later for you to express your interest. Then, just as part of Dalgo as well as Project Tech for Dev, there are a lot of data specific and adjacent sessions we do. On the Dalgo end of things, we have monthly sessions bringing in specific NGOs to talk about how they've used data in their context, specifically in terms of programs. These are great opportunities to interact with the NGOs. TAP has actually been part of one of our NGOs webinars in the past. We've done a really cool showcase with them back in June of 2025. So if you would like to subscribe to our email to get updates about these webinars, Pratiksha is going to share the link in the chat. And we also have a data catalyst program, which is essentially a three month long program where you can share your data requirements, and select NGOs can work with mentors closely to be able to bring in any maturity in tech across AI, data, as well as any other use case that you're looking for. Pratiksha, do you want to add something over here?
About Data Catalyst program,
Yeah.
yeah. So this year's cohort is already underway. So you'd have to apply for this next year. This happens once a year. And essentially, you get paired with a data engineer who then sits down, understands your use case, and works as a consultant with you over 3 months to figure out and help you solve your data programs. And at the end of the 3 months, the NGO that's made the most progress usually gets a grant as well. So this is done with the purpose of building tech maturity in organizations. So you should keep an eye on the cohort, and if you feel like you're a good fit, apply for it next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Pratiksha. And finally, thank you so much for being a super engaged audience. We have one request. We're going to trigger a poll to get your thoughts on how the session was, what you took away from it, what you'd like us to do more of, so that we can learn from this as well. If you could please stay back, I'm going to trigger the poll in just a second. Yeah, you'll see it in front of your screen right now. If you could please help fill those out and share anything else that you'd also like to let us know in terms of what you'd like to see next, that would help us inform what we want to do in the future. And in the meantime, please feel free to unmute and share any takeaways, any questions as well. We'll be hanging back for 15 more minutes to take any questions.
Yeah, can I just say one thing? I want to add a bit of context about how all these sessions came about. We, after talking with Pradeep and Tejas, they request, and they are familiar with our work at TAP and Sneha and a couple of other orgs. They were just saying, uh, can you run some initial sessions to get a sense of what it is that would help the organizations in the UIA network think about tech slightly better, perhaps. And the two main areas they requested we focus on were data and AI. But that is their perspective, and so we've started with this session. Now we have another session planned in 2 weeks' time. Nominally, we thought that AI might be the right topic to take up because it is a hot topic for everyone. And within AI, obviously, there are many, many different things, from like basic, how do you prompt better, to actually building out models that help you do fairly sophisticated things. What we would really appreciate now, both in terms of the feedback on the survey, as well as maybe in conversation now or in chat, is a bit more insight in, hey, what did you get away from, what did you get out of this? What would you like? Would you like more practical sessions? As we said, Tech for Dev is not about selling products and all. Fundamentally, we want to build capacity in the ecosystem. Something like Dalgo emerged because when working with multiple NGOs, we found that we were doing the same thing again and again and again, rather than doing the same thing again and again and again, do it in a platform that can be reused. So yes, that is the context. This is a two-way learning. We learn about you and how you're thinking about tech, what you're doing, and hopefully you learn something about, hey, what are others doing? What are things that we could be doing better with tech, data, AI?
Thanks for that, Ashwin. Hopefully you guys have filled out the feedback poll and will be hanging back
Pratiksha.
to answer questions.
Yeah, Pratiksha, around 7 folks have participated. Would love if everyone present here could fill out the poll. Just to reiterate Ashwin's point, it would really help us learn uh, what we can do, what we did well, what we can do better.
Thank you, Ashwin, Stuti, and Pratiksha. Tejas here. I have been silently listening to the session. Have been really happy and impressed with the amount of data information that you've been able to share with the people who have attended the session. We've tried our best to kind of prompt people to attend this session. However, you know how things are. A lot of people have connected with me. Can you all hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Yes, we
Yeah,
can.
yeah. A lot of people have connected with me at 2:30 or 3 o'clock and said, can we join the session now? So I flatly refused. I said, nay. Please attend the next one. But thank you so much for all the training that you provided in a very easy and understandable manner. I am myself very bad at all this. So I mean, it was really informative for me. I kept silent because I did not understand quite a bit of it myself. But I'm sure all the organizations who have been working with data will be able to relate and understand and have gained a lot from this session. And will push forward in their data management journey through your support. Thank you so much. Everybody who has attended, thank you for attending. Please try and get more of your colleagues to attend the next one. Maybe it might, because it's AI and as Ashwin said, a hot topic, it will have more attendance. But for today's session, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Tejas. Super encouraging.
Yeah, thank you. And we're here, so feel free to ask any questions you guys have. And it doesn't have to be related to anything we've spoken about. It could be general about data.
We can also share the recording with any others who weren't able to join today.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. So please share the recording. Also, if anyone wants the presentation, I'm not sure if that will help, but
Yeah, we'll
whatever
definitely be
else.
sharing that by email.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If people don't really have questions, can we let them go? They've really given a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I have a
We'll-
question.
there you go.
I was waiting for you guys to finish. So if we could stop the screen share, might be easier.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing.
So one of the things you mentioned, sorry, is my voice echoing?
No.
No, it's all right.
One of the things you mentioned very early on was about privacy of data. Yeah, and I don't know what others, but we left, right, and center collect private information. So I would love to hear some more about that and what is okay, not okay, and even if you've collected, what are some aspects that we can do to take care of it, and what is a complete no to not collect.
Sure. I'm happy to speak about that. So, in terms of data collection, if you find that historically you're collecting this piece of data, but you're not really drawing analytics from it, I would say stop collecting it. So, that's like the most basic piece of advice. But secondly, what we call this as data engineers is PII. One thing that you can do with all the historical data you've collected is called PII masking. So there's entire libraries and frameworks that exist to do this. So if you have, a tech team internally or even just people who are comfortable using ChatGPT, you can experiment around with some Python code internally using those frameworks. What this does is it replaces data. So it takes addresses and replaces it with a spoofed address that is similar to the original one, takes phone numbers and emails and replaces it with spoofed information. So essentially, for the purpose of insights, if you want to know things like how many people are in each city, right? You can still do that with the spoofed addresses, but this data then becomes shareable because nobody can look at it and then go track down one of the people that you have. So PII masking is something that you can try out. And lastly, make sure that when you're doing the data collection, that you have a question in there saying that, hey, we're going to be sharing this data with our donors and stakeholders. Do we have your consent for that? And if they select no, then in any data transformation layer that you have, you should have a filter there. That if a person has said no in terms of their consent for sharing the data, you don't include them in the transformation, the dashboards, the end results that you have.
Yeah.